Well, hello and welcome to India Ideas. I'm Gautam Roy, and if you want to know what is happening at the confluence of science and technology, innovation and entrepreneurship in the country, this is your one-stop show because what we're doing today is talking about the edtech space or the sector among startups. It's seen an unprecedented boom, growth and investment-wise, both during the COVID season, especially because of the closure of schools and universities and attendance being lowered as well in working places. Now, India has the second highest number of edtech companies in the world, and the estimated market is growing from anywhere between 39% to 52% CAGR, and it's expected to be a $10 billion market by 2025. That's how huge it's going to be. Now, what does this mean for the country in terms of its needs and aspirations is what we're talking about with three representatives of the industry today. I'm referring to it as an industry now. We have Mayank Kumar, co-founder and MD, Upgrad, which is India's largest online higher education company. We've got Subramanian Vishwanathan, or Subbu, co-founder and CEO Disperse, which is an AI-powered skills and career acceleration suite for enterprises. And we have Survi Dera with us as well. She's founder and CEO CareerGuide.com, which provides AI-guided career counseling to students. Welcome to you all. First, if I could ask you, Mayank, tell us about your company because it has been around for a while. It's acquired a certain size and certain importance. Just tell us about the journey in the first place. How did it proceed and come to the stage where you're doing pretty well for yourselves right now?
No, thanks a lot. Thanks for having us here, Gautam. I think, I mean, as an entrepreneur, as a founder, you will never be doing enough. You always have that sort of push and willingness to sort of do what's beyond there. But for us, Gautam, I would just maybe break down our journey into 2 or 3 sort of phases. I think the first phase for us was just about finding whether people will accept online education. And I think when we started off in 2015, online education was not acceptable as a terminology, was not something that people were looking at taking up in a meaningful way. So establishing a good product and establishing the fact that, look, online learning can happen and it's equally good, if not better than what offline education was. That was our first sort of work that we did. And so we invested a lot on technology, our learning platform and our product. I think phase 2 is where we are focusing a lot more on providing outcomes to our learners and now scaling up the business. So that's where now we have come to the scale up part of it, which is where now you feel that, look, we are pretty much all over the place looking at building a culture of lifelong learning in the Indian ecosystem. But overall, if I put it down, Gautam, for us, it's been quite a humbling and fulfilling journey that while you have built a sustainable scale business, at the same time impacting so many people's careers, it just makes you feel that you can go back to sleep peacefully, that at the end of the day, perhaps having what you're doing, multiple careers are getting impacted and getting built. So that's been a quick sort of overview of how the journey has been for us. I would say overall quite pleased with how we have progressed, but there's always that internal drive that you always want more and you always want the next phase of the growth to come in as well.
Sounds wonderful. And Subbu, tell us about Disperse because you're also in that skilling people sort of space, but it's more of a niche and you fulfill requirements that companies really need to be fulfilled as well among their employees too.
That's right. So Disperse is an AI-powered skills and career acceleration suite for companies, for enterprises. So we approach the skilling problem on a B2B basis. Unlike Upgrad, unlike CareerGuide, we're not a B2C company. We're an enterprise B2B SaaS company, meaning we work with the learning and development functions and the HR functions of enterprises and solve the problem of reskilling and upskilling. So we do that by providing a learning platform that helps in identification of the right skills and identification of skill gaps, measuring it, and creating and delivering the right learning and capability building programs to bridge those skill gaps. So like I said, we approach it from a different angle. Disperse was the winner of the Atmanirbhar app challenge under the category of e-learning. We have 1 million users that we cater to. We are, and some of the top brands that you see, like Amazon, Bajaj Allianz, Swiggy, Uber, Tata AIG, Kotak, all of them use Disperse to power their learning requirements.
Great, sounds great. And Surabhi, you're in a different category altogether, and we don't have, one of those big edtech startups with us on the show today who are in the K-12 space. But I believe what you do has something that extends K-12 into careers and for students choosing, what more should they be doing where higher learning is concerned. Tell us about your company's progression.
Sure. Thanks, Gautam, for identifying this as a different category, not the regular e-learning. That's very important. And that's been an exciting journey personally for me. Talking about building a career guidance category in the country has been a very, very rewarding. And I take immense pride in saying that we have been able to do it. We deal from age group of 9th grade onwards to early professional 25, 26 years. Now, when everybody is talking about, hey, take up this coaching exam, hey, take up this online learning, hey, take up this competitive exam, but which one is right for me is a very, very big question, right? Should I be, because every single one is talking about, hey, do this, this will make amazing career. Hey, do this, this will make amazing career. Now, so that's where Career Guide comes in. What's right for you? In the transitions, what's right subject, what's right elective, what's right careers, what right courses, what right colleges, right? Maybe what's right online programs to go ahead with. All of this comes under the basket of career questions. All of this comes under basket of career guidance. And we at Career Guide do this beautifully with help of scientifically supported psychometric tests. We have different assessments for different age group. You want to choose a stream after 10, there's a psychometric test for you. You want to choose a career, there's a psychometric test for you. You want to choose a commerce career, there's a psychometric test for you. Once you take up that psychometric test, we connect you to counselors, certified career counselors, instantly on video and call. That's why whether you're sitting in Bhuj, whether you're sitting in, remotest part, you're not in the elitist of Delhi center or Bombay, but you have the best guidance, best mentor access to. And all of this is done with a marketplace model. We have student on one side, we have career counselors on the other side. We match them with our AI-enabled technology. And yes, you have all the answers, all the career questions solved. Yes, Gautam.
Yes, definitely. I mean, that is what is really the key to online education, the technology behind it. And Mayank, just tell us a little bit more about it, because more and more, I guess, the focus is on to ensure that online learning is no different from, face-to-face physical learning in different institutions and perhaps even beyond it.
No, I'd say sometimes, Gautam, it is perhaps better. And better than what you would get in an offline setting, and multiple reasons for that. I think we cater to largely working professionals. And look, today, if you ask around everyone, we change jobs every 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And every time that you change jobs, different skills are required. And at that point in time, where you go, you do not have the option of going back to university and pick up those skills. So from that context, I think online does provide the flexibility, does provide the convenience, that you can learn, pick up skills, and still continue to grow in your career. But I think one of the critical things that we have noticed, Gautam, is that online education was a lot about making content accessible. So if you want the Stanford content, IIT content, IIM content, the content was available. But in true sense, online education is not about making content accessible. That's the job of a library. Online education is about delivering outcome and helping people move up in the career. And I think today, as we sit, what gives us the most satisfaction is when we see someone who was on a career break for 7, 8 years, finding a job, coming back again. Someone who was in Navy has never gone to a formal education, has always done distance education, getting one of the lead data scientists in one of the largest OTT technology platforms. Someone who did not get a job out of campus is now getting calls from Google, Uber, and Amazon in the US, which people from the best institution die to get into. I think the career impact, where people are seeing significant change in their salary, where people are changing significant difference in their jobs and the careers that they're doing, it means that they have a very different life cycle in the future. They go for a different vacation, they manage a different education for their kids, they get better health support for their parents. That change that is happening is not something that the country is used to, because we always feel online education is about learning some content and that's it. But when it's leading to career outcomes and tangible impact in someone's career, people are seeing it in a very different light, that it could be as good and perhaps better than what offline education is about.
No, definitely, and it can be an engine, can't it, Subbu, of reskilling people as well, which is what even Prime Minister Modi keeps talking about. That we need the best skilled people in the country, especially who are in tune with the technological changes that are going on, because a lot of the conventional jobs and a lot of the conventional careers will be completely disrupted, and they are being already completely disrupted. And this is perhaps the best, most efficient way of ensuring that people don't lose jobs, and there are more jobs that are created.
Absolutely. And at Disperse, the reason we take the reason why we take the employer approach, which is reskill via the employer, is because the employer has the biggest influence on a learner's time. If the learning is done formally by the L&D department digitally, and sometimes in partnership with companies like Upgrad, then we have the best chance of that learning actually happens. So that's the reason we approach it from from the company's angle.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of how you help different people choose their career paths as well as what they want to study further, Surabhi, what kind of instruments do you use that are technology based that basically tells you what they're best oriented for and to how to take their careers forward?
Yeah, you're right, Gautam, because we end up thinking that career guidance or such questions are more of a gut feeling or a marks-based driven thing. Oh, you got X marks in maths, then maybe you should go ahead with this. But very important thing is that the very scientific, across the world, there are scientific tools and instruments which comes into place. And I mentioned in one of my earlier conversation, one of the very, very important tools is psychometric tools. These psychometric tests are validated, standardized, reliable assessments based on psychological parameters, which gauges interest and aptitude of an individual, of a professional, and gives them an indicator. Hey, out of 1,000 career options, how about you start moving in this direction, right? You sound creative. Your inclination looks more imaginative, creative, artistic. Hey, look, there's a program in media and entertainment. Why don't you try that? There should be, maybe you should try a hand or internships into maybe try an internship with AYV, audio video technology. So these are the very important tools. In fact, we at Career Guide do not start any counseling session or any guidance session without this tool. This is a standard, and this also standardizes the entire process, right? So if a student sitting in Patna talks to Surabhi, or if a student sitting in Dharavi talks to another counselor, right? They both have the similar outcome, because the analysis is not based on my gut feeling of a career counselor or some random questions thrown through, but it's a very standardized process, Gautam.
Right. Now, Mayank, education is a space which is very wide, and there are different range of edtech startups in the country as well. What to speak of the world? At least 5 different categories, starting from K-12 to even those that provide software to run educational institutions. Now, in terms of policy initiatives of the government, there has been a lot of work on startups per se. But where do you think the government needs to perhaps do more where edtech itself is concerned? It's a huge market. It's seen huge investments even in this phase, the COVID phase, perhaps the second highest next to health sector.
No, I think I personally feel, Gautam, that the government does enough. It's for us as entrepreneurs to pick up and pivot that and build on top of that. If you actually look at in the last few weeks or months or at least few quarters, government has taken very specific initiatives, and national education policy was a great one in that regard, where they said, there are 3-4 things that came out very clearly. One was about the credit bank. So in India, not many people know that even after 12th, a lot of people start their first year in education and in undergrad program or bachelor's program, but then they drop off, either to become a sales agent or to become a delivery boy or to sort of end up working on informal or formal economy in that context. the credit bank allows people to continue their education even longer. That's been a very, very positive step that the government had taken with the NEP coming in. Two, government is now exploring within colleges and universities, moving online proportion from 20% to 40%. 40% of your learning you do online. And that's a huge, huge shift from what I think all of us went through our education system for when we did not have access to those kind of quality of education. And then finally, online degree coming in play. It is going to open up a very different market. It's just the quality of education when it comes to the tier 2, tier 3 cities. If you get access to the best institutions and best degree coming from a Delhi University or JNU or Mumbai University to a small town in Jharkhand or Chhattisgarh, those things will change the dynamics and demographic of the Indian education ecosystem. But I think I personally feel that, look, we don't want anything specific from the government coming in. Encourage entrepreneurship, encourage the adoption of online education. I think EdTech entrepreneurs are smart enough to figure out what they want to pick up and build on top of that.
Okay. Subbu, do you agree with what Mayank has said, or do you feel that the government does need to perhaps put in some guidelines in place as to how this business of online education be conducted, especially beyond schools, where there's a lot of gray area, and different state governments, different institutions also sometimes have different things to say about it?
Absolutely. I think the government can do quite a lot. It is true that entrepreneurs are smart and they can work within constraints, but what if the constraints are relaxed? There are three things that I can think of from a government's perspective. The first is, if you look at governments in Singapore and Malaysia, they offer reimbursements for workplace lifelong learning programs. So for example, if I'm a 30-year-old, if I want to upskill myself, I want to do a training program, the government actually gives money to the learner, to the employee, as part of the upskilling budget. So I think if these sort of training reimbursement programs exist formally by the government, that would create incentives for the population to actually upskill themselves. And the government can create tracks. You can create tracks for everything from the NSDC sort of skills to the more high-tech skills like data science and computer animation, graphics, and so on. So that is the first thing that I think the government can do. The second thing the government can do is sort of create a centralized platform for micro-credentialing. I think that is something where technology and startups can actually play a role. So you have your Aadhaar card, right? So Aadhaar card is the universal identification for somebody. Why not have a universal, centralized, blockchain-based credentialing system that the government runs? That the government knows that Gautam Roy, for example, is a certified media broadcaster, and this is his proficiency level. And the government is fully equipped to do that. In fact, we'd love to partner with the government to do something like that. And the third is, I'd say, give equal recognition, like Mayank said, for online as well as offline learning programs. I think the new education policy is the right step in this regard. But I would like that to be extended from formal education given by universities and educational institutions to learning in the workplace. So make online learning an equal citizen, a first-class citizen compared to offline training.
Okay, that's quite a bit you suggested, and perhaps you might have made some of those suggestions even when you were part of that App Innovation Challenge. So would you like to add something in terms of what kind of policy initiatives are required to ensure that our students, aspiring people who want good careers or want to start their own businesses, that is also something perhaps you might be counseling about, end up doing what they want to do?
Sure, Gautam, thanks. I've been part of a lot of policy making, especially around career counseling with different government bodies. And I totally agree with Mayank when he says that enough load on government, let's entrepreneurs come forward. And if you will see that COVID has nothing been, is analogous to what demonetization did to online inclusions of payments and financial inclusion, which brought everybody in. That's exactly what COVID has done to online education. Today, I don't have to teach a rickshaw puller's family why somebody has to go online to learn something. They have learned this process. This has actually eased work of government and eased work of entrepreneurs, maybe by a decade, to jump, start and get ahead of that mindset. I definitely think National Education Policy is a very, very ambitious document. Interestingly, that's a very, very good intent from the government side saying that, hey, we recognize we require change. Now they have outlined it. When it gets implemented, that's a different story. But yes, a lot of very beautiful points. Like it talks about we don't want rote learning. Once they say that we want to kill the tuition culture, and the credit system, which Mayank pointed out, that dropouts will also get a vocational degree. And you will have mobilization of education. I don't have to strict with maths, physics, chemistry combination. I can pick up a lot of combination the way a IB school student does. So there's a lot of all these things government has talked about in new education policy, and that's a good enough cue for all the parents, students to start looking towards it. What definitely government can do, Gautam, is put a digital cheap device on everybody's hand with a cheap internet connection, and trust me, rest of it will be done by the smart demographic of India and the smart entrepreneurs of India.
We're working towards it. The infrastructure is being strengthened, and the price of smartphones has been coming down as well. But perhaps for e-learning, you need a bigger screen device as well. That is something that our manufacturers, and it's all about Make in India and Made in India now as well, they could be looking at as well, because the market is huge. Mayank, when you talk about this COVID phase, there is this realization as well that now vaccines are coming in, and we will have a situation perhaps next year where students will start getting back to schools, people will be attending offices 100%, and then what will happen to online education? Are you guys pondering that eventuality and working on what to do about it to ensure that you guys keep growing the way you guys have been projected to grow?
No, I think we are very, we are not thinking about that at all. I think we believe that the good part that Gautam COVID did, I don't think that for our sector, which is adult professional learning, it was not an inflection point, but it was definitely a very strong tailwind. Because for a lot of professionals, while online became center stage, it was not that they were moving from offline to online, because they were not going to any place. They were coming online at the first place. Two, job insecurity was pretty high in the professional ecosystem, where they did not know whether jobs will stay or not. So willingness to invest and put in the dollars on learning was not there enough. Now cut to when we get to things opening up and vaccination coming in. I think the good part that we have done is the amount of time it would have taken for building of credibility of online education, which in my mind would have taken 2 to 3 years, happen in 2 to 3 months.
Yes.
And that credibility building is going to sustain. And I think tomorrow, when someone sees the results coming out from online program and says, look, why do I go to an offline institution where there again I will get a 40, 50, 60, 100% hike, while I can do online and still continue to get the same outcome and save on the money of lost salary. So I think we have demonstrated enough to prove that online education is here to stay. There are certain things inevitable, Gautam. I see it as that way, that it's a tsunami waiting to happen. It may not happen like a tsunami. It may happen like a nice wave coming in. But online education is definitely here to stay. COVID, not COVID, it's been accelerated, and the acceleration momentum will continue even after economy opens up.
Mm-hmm. Is that your perspective as well, Subbu? Do you see that online education is here to stay and grow even when you have physical institutions, and it will not be a scenario, or it may well be a scenario where, like they're saying, brick and mortar stores are being replaced by digital transactions? Is that something that you see happening in the case of EdTech as well?
Absolutely. I'll give you the workplace perspective. For us, like Mayank said, COVID-19 was sort of the trigger point for digital transformations to take place in companies. For us, digital transformation was the story that every chief digital officer or the chief information officer was talking about, where more of the business is done online, and I'm talking about staff. If you look at a typical L&D budget, learning and development budget of companies, about 60% of that was spent on face-to-face training programs. And now, thanks to COVID, there is the inclination to actually do that online, either in a self-paced, learn at your own pace format, or in live virtual sessions such as these. I think that's here to say. Now that companies and HR and L&D heads are starting to see the benefits of online training, and they believe that they can also be effective. Of course, I don't see it entirely being completely online. I think all those projections about the fact that we'll all work remotely forever, or there won't be any face-to-face meetings ever. I think all that is a little bit of a hype. I think we will reach a new normal, which is a hybrid. So you will certainly not have as many face-to-face interactions for training in the corporate world as you had before. I think that will come down substantially, and the amount of online training interactions that you will have will go up substantially. It'll be a different equilibrium, and this time the equilibrium will be tilted in favor of online training.
Okay. Now, Surbhi, the thing is that we have established, I guess, through the course of the program that online education is here to stay. And a lot of people have gotten into the space in this phase as well, the COVID phase as well. Like I mentioned at the start, that India is second largest where EdTech is concerned in terms of the number of companies, but the number is around 4,450, 4,500. But a lot of them keep shutting down as well. Now, you've been around for quite some time. If people want to sustain their businesses, what kind of advice would you give? Because this is a show where we want people to, be more and more entrepreneurship, come up with companies that innovate for the country and take it forward. Also provide jobs.
Yeah, Gautam, thanks for this question. In fact, the beauty of education business is that it can be for profit, but you can only sustain if you're doing original, authentic work. You're not doing for investors, you're not doing to create a show, or you're not doing to just because the hype of some sector coming up. Unlike, e-commerce, people are putting in money, everybody wants it, let me set it up. It's not possible in education space to build like that. You need to be genuine enough to deliver a product or a service or learning and driven with an outcome.
And content.
The content. So just not the content, but the outcome driven out of it. So there has to be genuinity of it. You just cannot buy and plug in and sell. So you cannot have a content gatherers and aggregate it and just sell it. It has to have a genuine purpose, genuine outcome to it. So it's not just money game. It's also the outcome intent driven. That's very important. So that's one of the reasons you see there are universities who would have put in a lot of money, but still they don't fill seats. That's because of outcome driven, right? So very important. The beauty of this business is if you do good, it's not your sales and marketing which will drive or fuel your growth. It's the real users which will fuel your growth, which will bring out the word of mouth and will talk about it and then bring you the next set of users. That's when you create the critical mass. That's where you sustain. It's not about selling a phone on an e-commerce site. When entrepreneurs who's getting into edtech space, they understand this. It's not about sourcing from this manufacturing industry, sourcing this from China and building and gathering a technology and a team and build it up. That won't work. Put up a genuine product, put up a genuine delivery, put up a genuine outcome, be genuinely interested in growth of your candidate, of your student, of your user, and you will survive, you will sustain, and you will grow. Gautam, that's from my side.
Yes, that really takes user experience to another level. One will really have to apply oneself to make a success if one wants to be in the edtech sector. And that's what we learn as things grow. So will the country, and we will make progress collectively. Thanks a lot for joining India Ideas today to talk about your experience and what others can also derive from that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.